time for Nerdy for 30, the podcast where we finally talk about Andor. My name is Kevin Bauer, a.k.a. the leader of the Galactic Syndic's Loyalist faction. With me, as always, is the mastermind of the Aldani heist, Tim Keck.
Yeah, buddy.
And as stated, today, we're talking about Andor. I have never been as scared to hear what your reaction was to a TV show or movie. This means so much to me. Tim,
oh no!
What did you think of Andor?
It's not for me.
Oh,
I did not enjoy it. I feel torn because everyone has said this was so good. I've gotten so many Rogue One comparisons. Everyone has told me this is awesome. This is what Star Wars should have been. And I think I've been consistent in my thoughts on all of these things with like Furiosa and Obi-Wan. Like, why do I care about this? Who are these people? Why do I care about Cassian? People keep telling me Cassian's great. I haven't seen him do anything great. He's killed people. That's cool, you know, but but he has greatness in him. People are saying things like, I love him more than he could ever wrong me and stuff like that. What was that? Someone gives him a monologue about how Cassian is an unstoppable force for good. Why? What good has he done in this entire thing? I don't want to get too worked up because people actually care about this as opposed to Furiosa and Obi-Wan.
Oh my God.
This has all the flaws for me. I think maybe a best case scenario, this got turned into a show that's not really my speed anyway. I'm not a big drama guy. I like having fun when I watch stuff. So if you're looking for more of a Game of Thrones thing, I'm definitely prepared to explain to you why this is nothing like Game of Thrones. And Game of Thrones delivers on things that this one does not. But yeah, I'm sorry. We've been making jokes about this. I've been making jokes about this. I genuinely thought I was going to love this because everyone said I would. And so I've been like, oh yeah, this is going to suck. I don't want to watch this piece of shit. And I don't know. I feel I have a hard time even coming up with things wrong with this because this meant so little to me. Like I just had so little interest in this. So little interest.
Wow.
Not even in like a way where I hate it. I don't hate it. It's okay. It's just so okay for me. And I would love for you to open my eyes and convince me that if I rewatch it 2 more times, something's really going to pop out. But I don't know.
No, you know what? I think this is fair. Obviously, like I said, this is something that I love. I probably watched the series 5 times all the way through at this point. I think it's going to be a good character building experience for me to hear some flaws about it and to accept that and to accept that maybe this does have flaws. And you, listener, if you're as passionate about Andor as I am, then maybe it's going to be a good experience for you too. Because if we truly love this thing, then we should be able to weather hearing somebody have a couple gripes about it.
Listen,
I think we should be open-minded to that.
Champ. Yeah. You're the critic's choice. I think we need to swap roles here. And you need to represent the audience. You need to come correct and scold me into liking this. This has gotten so much heat. People love this movie, Kevin. I am putting that burden entirely on your shoulders to represent them and to make this a listenable experience for them. Because otherwise I'm just going to nitpick this whole thing. There's things I like, but you know.
So there's a few, I kind of know what multi-pronged approach that I have that I want to address this from. Although I will say I did not have a contingency for this because I also thought you were really going to like it. But I think so. The way that you're expressing feeling about the show is the way that I felt about the show through episode 7. It took me way longer than it takes a lot of people to start liking this show. I think for myself specifically, I had no idea what I was going in for. I wasn't second screening it. But I think I wasn't watching it with the level of like enraptured attention that I was watching it with later. But by the time I got to episode 7, which I believe is right when they get to the prison for the first time, I started understanding what the show was. And so that was the thing. As soon as that dawned on me and I realized what I was actually watching, suddenly I wanted to go back and rewatch everything that I might have missed the first time around, because I could sense that we were building towards something big at the end. And I wanted to make sure that I was aware of all the pieces and parts that went into it. So in terms of the general gist of the show and the fact that you're going to see 4 mini arcs take place that are also comprised as one big arc, and you're going to see cause and effect from one arc play out in other arcs. Are you like,
wait, so can you go through the arcs
about that approach?
Are you prepared to go through these arcs? Because that's kind of been like the selling point for me on this, is like power through. We can talk about the negotiation of like how many okay episodes are worth sitting through to get to a good episode. I'd say 7 is probably not a good 7 to what, 5, maybe that's not fair. A great ratio. For me, it was probably like 10, where I was like kind of back into it. And I still wasn't like by the time we got back to the planet and we've got an end game going, but I was kind of under the idea that there were all these different threads and all of these different characters, and they would all intersect and culminate into something good, that Mon Mothma would somehow be with Cassian, talking to Stellan Skarsgård about, getting Binks out of prison or something, and I feel like it never. So what are these different lines that you're talking about, and how did they actually come together?
Okay, so the first arc is Cassian embarking on the journey and getting off of Ferrix. So like the first 3 episodes take place with Cassian on Ferrix, and he's kind of trying to, stop fucking around and go do something. Like he's trying to get out of there. And a lot of what he's doing there is kind of a direct reaction to the fact that that opening scene where he kills the Primor guys, that kind of starts him off, because he starts out and he's like, fuck, I gotta go. The heat is on me. And for the most part, the heat is not even on him. Like it's highlighting a version of the Empire that's like completely bloated. And there's just, if it wasn't for that one really dogged, upwardly mobile guy, he would have completely gotten away with that murder. Like they would have been happy to say, like, you know what, these guys got into a bar fight in XYZ or died defending whatever the fuck. But like they were okay with this. It was a fully bloated Empire. But it's like the dual splits, like the fact that Cassian thinks I got to get out of here and starts getting panicked, starts him off on what's going to be the whole journey. And then the fact that I always forget this guy's name, the one really upwardly mobile guy, who has
Cyril Karn.
Yes, thank you. The fact that Cyril is actually willing to pursue him kind of drives us through. I feel like Cyril isn't actually that critically important even until later in the season, because the biggest thing he does is he's involved in like the shootout in the beginning. But then really all that's doing is kind of pushing Cassian to Luthen in the first place. It's kind of, Cassian feels like he has to go, which is what gets him to interact with Luthen in the first place and kind of starts him on this path of helping out the resistance. But he doesn't really want to be a rebel at this point. He wants to find his sister. But for the most part, Cassian at the beginning of the show, he is just looking out for himself.
Right. So like the beginning of the show, right. I'm thinking he kills the guys. I'm thinking this is like a pirate guy, like traveling from world to world, scouring the universe for his sister. This is a guy who just like lives there, and he walks to like the bad part of town, starts asking people about his sister, even though I guess he's lived there his whole life. And he just wandered to a strip club. Somehow that he went to a strip club, asked about his sister, and somehow that leads to him getting gunned down. Like, why can't they arrest him? Why can't he just give them money? Why is he killing them? Who's his sister? Also, the whole time I'm watching this show, like someone's got to be his sister. And then he's met like every woman in the cast already. So unless Mon Mothma is his sister, this is literally the only reason for him to be looking for a sister is to get him to the strip club, which kickstarts this whole thing. And I don't know. I get what you're saying, that this is like, it is an interesting, it says, I think there's a lot of like metaphor here and symbolism about the government and like what it means. and like bloated government and like not allocating resources and what their intentions actually are with us and whatnot. And if I don't know anything about this guy or why I should care about this guy, it's still hard for me to invest in that timeline. You know, like I can nod and be like, I get it. This one guy is the one doing all this stuff. It's just still not enough for me, considering this Cassian guy. You know, it kind of feels to me, I'm going to let you get back into I want to hear the rest of these threads, but it's hard for me to invest in this guy that I know is in Rogue One. And in Rogue One, he's going to do this thing that matters. And so there is this element of like, you know, of course he's going to be alive for Rogue One. But that aside, in the back of my mind now, I'm kind of thinking, well, nothing he's going to do is going to be that important, because we know he's in Rogue One. And then that's when he does important stuff. He does really important stuff in Rogue One that directly leads into the important stuff that happens in the original trilogy. Like Rogue One is incredible. Rogue One has all these visuals and this landscape that are just not in Andor, as far as I can tell. And that is like a prequel to the original 3, and it builds on that world and it leads right into it. And that movie, you know, that's one that defies the odds. You know, I'm not into Furiosa, not into Obi-Wan. Rogue One is the exception to the rule. And then this is leading into Rogue One, which is the prequel to the original trilogy. Like Rogue One was already a huge leap of faith for me.
Sure.
And then this is like another step removed. Like you have a hard enough time convincing me to care about Rogue One, and now you want me to care about Andor? What?
Yeah.
I also thought Andor was a planet this whole time. I'll be honest. I didn't realize it was just a guy's name. I could have sworn Andor was the name of a planet. I'm probably thinking of Alderaan.
You're thinking of Andor, my man.
Yeah.
Where the Ewoks live.
Yeah, baby.
Andor, but it's just Ewoks, but it has the same tone of this show. I am in.
That would be incredible, because I can invest in those teddy bears.
I feel like that's
leave the
what
tags
the
on. They're
Street,
going to be worth something.
You know, if they all just had tags on it. If you know how Sesame Street sometimes does just incredible parodies. If Sesame Street had torn out like an Andor parody, let's make it happen. Yeah, you're totally right. This is a prequel to a prequel, right? So like it entirely depends on your level of investment in seeing this guy who was fully dedicated to giving his life to a cause in Rogue One be a guy who is not a team player and not interested in the same cause in Andor. You know, your mileage varies depending on how much you're in on that character. What ended up hooking me in this, I think, wasn't even necessarily Diego Luna, who, I mean, great performance, obviously. But like for this, I feel like it was more when I was realizing the other side storylines and the way that everything was building. I genuinely think Luthen is the coolest character in all of Star Wars. I like the scene
Luthen
where
rocks.
Holy fuck, dude. That scene where he has the TIE fighter battle and fucking gets out of there is the coolest shit I've ever seen.
That's amazing. Luthen is great. Stellan Skarsgård crushes in this. And I care about what happens to Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I kind of, in the back of my head, I kind of know it doesn't matter, I guess. But also, I haven't seen him. He hasn't been in any of these things. I don't know why. He breaks the rules again for me, where I'm like, I love his character. I love what he's doing. It also makes sense that he has this technology that we haven't seen before, because he's like a weird underground pirate and he's like a collector and he's clearly modifying all of this stuff. And it's like, yes, this guy is like a cool, they just set him up so well to do cool stuff. And he's the main source of like, I just had to know what was going on with him. And I like the end of the movie, I'm at the end of the show, I'm still like, why is he on this planet? Why is he here? This is a little ham-fisted. And then all of a sudden he's ready to work with Cassian Andor. But why didn't he just offer Cassian Andor a job right away? But he had to kill him. But why did he have to kill him?
He's got to trust
because if
him.
anyone finds out who he is, then he's screwed and the rebellion's done. But like, why? Why is he so crucial to the rebellion? It doesn't make any sense. Why does Moth need to do a fundraiser? This is literally like, it's like episode 1 when they're like, let's talk about the Trade Federation. And Mon Mothma is trying to raise funds. She's basically doing like a bikini car wash on this planet, just like so they can go to states. You know, like he's like selling Girl Scout cookies so they can pay for like, you know, a camping trip or whatever it is. Like, it's just so goofy. And then the plot line there is that they're marrying 15-year-old kids to each other. Like, what are you doing?
I was so in, dude. I got to tell you, man, I was so in.
She's so ridiculous.
I don't normally like, I think she's great. It's so cool. They're able to give us a cross section of all these different aspects of life, and you're able to see the way that this kind of a thing, like this kind of rebellion, would be felt. The show is all about echoes. You're able to see how events at one tier of society echo through other tiers of society. So you're able to directly see how some of these actions that Andor's taking that are, I mean, bankrolled by Mon Mothma and by Luthen are then coming back later. There's the scene on Narkina 5 or no, Narkina 5 is the prison. There's the scene on fucking Jesus Christ, Niamos, where Cassian gets arrested by a shore trooper who thinks that he did something. He's innocent of the thing he's been accused of. But the only reason there's increased police presence is because of the Aldhani heist. So he made it away from the Aldhani heist, but the direct result of the heist is the increased police presence throughout the rest of the universe, which leads to him getting picked up on Niamos. It's incredible. Like, that's the kind of stuff where it's like, you can draw the line.
And I feel like it was a real commentary on the prison industrial complex.
Oh, you know, for sure.
Maybe my favorite part of this whole show was the end credits stinger where they show that the things they've been building this whole time attached to the Death Star.
I hated that.
Really? Yeah. I loved
really?
that because it's like they're building a thing. Like it just shows that the prison thing meant something. They're not just making license plates. They were being, because, you know, the prison industrial complex, right? You know, like every company benefits from prison labor, which is basically free. So of course that if all of the big companies in the world benefit from prison labor, or at least our country, then it benefits them to have more people in prison because then they get more free labor. And the fact that this is being, you know, utilized not just for business, but for weaponry, for the military is weaponizing prisoners basically and using them to build the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy. That I find compelling. And I get how there's some symbolism in the fact that Cassian just gets grabbed and thrown into prison, but it's not enough for me as a character. Like, I get the symbolism behind it, but he's just hanging out and he gets thrown in jail. Like, couldn't he be in a compromising situation? Couldn't he be trying to do a thing? There's also a point in this movie where in this show, I think of it as a movie, at a show where he just goes on vacation. Like, that's the planet. He runs away. He's on vacation.
Yeah.
Then he's doing nothing.
Listening
and they're
to
just
sick
like
club music. He's listening to such sick club music. That song rules.
It just, I'm like, when they arrested him, I was like, I get it. And this doesn't do it for me, you know?
So
it's cool they're making this commentary, but you know,
I think a quick
Google would show that Disney benefits from all this stuff too.
I bet you're probably fucking right. I just to jump forward. So the first arc is Cassian getting off of Ferrix. Second arc, obviously the Aldhani heist. Third arc is the prison sequence. And I do want to jump past the Aldhani heist real quick to go into the prison stuff, because the prison stuff, like I said, is where it really locked in for me. So I think the reason that he has to get picked up when he's not directly doing anything wrong is similar to why we see so much wild shit happening in Rogue One, which is that because the earlier movies are kind of picking up, like because the actual episode 4 through 6 picked up at a point where the Empire is already this dominant force, they never felt the pressure in those movies to show us some of the awful shit that the Empire is doing. And Rogue One was really the first movie that gave us some tangible evidence of the awful shit that the Empire was doing to people. So I think similarly in this show, in order to move Cassian through his character arc of not caring about the rebellion, being very selfish, to caring about the rebellion and being willing to sacrifice his life to emancipate others, is that we need to see just how domineering the Empire is. And he needs to be picked up for something where he didn't even do anything wrong, because he needs to be completely morally outraged by what's happening to him So by the time he gets thrown in that prison, which is going to be the first time that he really actually starts to work with others, because the Aldani heist, he's still just looking out for himself. But the prison is where he really turns it and he starts actually working with other people and seeing the value in that and freeing all these people on all these other tiers that have been oppressed for no reason. He needs to know that it wasn't something causal for him, really. Like, if he got arrested after the Aldani heist, he might have reason to believe that everybody else there got arrested for cause. He needs to be picked up for fucking nothing so that he knows that every single person in those different tubes, they're innocent.
Okay, that's a good argument. I do like that. That makes sense because it does prove that everybody else is innocent too. I guess I saw it as like an opportunity for him to like be the hero or like, try and do the right thing. And instead he's arrested and like, it just felt like it could have been a character moment. But you're right. I mean, it does kind of give him, especially as the audience, it allows us to look at everyone in the prison as like an innocent bystander, even though I guess we don't explicitly know that to be true. There could just be murderers and criminals in there too. Like, I don't know.
There would be murderers.
But we give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I like the teamwork thing you're talking about too. But I mean, I still think he's out for number one during the prison heist. I mean, we get all the way to the top of this thing and find out Andy Serkis can't swim.
Oh, brutal.
Like, what? How is this possible? Why didn't he think of that? Why? I don't know. I guess like the plan is to run to the top of this thing and jump into the water. Like, how does the final thing? And then he just leaves him. They're like, oh, he got bumped in, but he does just leave everybody and they don't all join up again. He's got one dude and then it's like, we got to split up. Now he's on his own again. I feel like that still hasn't transformed him into a leader of men. And I'm not sure exactly what the catalyst is that gets him to ask Luthen at the end to join the cause.
Yeah. I think what finally brings it home to him is literally coming home to Ferrix. And then I think that hologram speech from Marva, where he hears her sentiment in the resistance, that it seems like she's been supporting the entire time, but for some reason he's been holding an arm's length.
Yeah, I mean, that's weird for me too, like Marva, it looks like she's, an old woman who doesn't have any friends for like the whole first part of the movie. And she's not meeting up with people. We're talking about this sister group that she used to be a part of, past tense. They're not coming over and hanging out with her, I don't think. And all of a sudden she means so much to the town that seeing her give a speech gets Ticket Guy to lay down his life. Like Ticket Guy dies and I'm like, oh God, not Ticket Guy. Oh, hell. But Ticket Guy is tearing up thinking about this person. I mean, they go to construction sites. Cassian goes to the construction site where there's like 60 guys hanging up gloves like they're hard hats and just hanging around the sun, which is goofy, but kind of fun.
Hey, man, you do that kind of work, you'd be hoping for gloves like that.
But that's like the main job there. Yeah. That's where like all the dudes are. And he only knows one guy there.
Yeah.
Of like all the dudes in the town, he only knows one guy. Like they're not doing a good job of selling me on the Andor family actually being a part of this community. And by the time we get to this speech, like some rando gives a speech and people are willing to die for it. Like, I don't know, maybe, if it's a good speech.
It's kind of shades of Saw Gerrera where, they show us as much as they can in Rogue One, but we're still kind of left with this feeling of like, how influential is Forrest Whitaker in this universe? Dude, like, we've only seen him hang out in this cave, but I guess people seem to respect him.
Dude, Saw Gerrera and Luthen are in two different fucking movies. That combination of people doesn't make any sense to me at all. Saw is just like off his rocker, just like going nuts. And Luthen is like cold and rational and calculating. And then, sorry, maybe my biggest beef in this whole thing, who's Krieger? Do we know Krieger? Have we seen Krieger? Krieger, because Luthen goes to Saw and says, I want you to work with Krieger. And then Saw's like, no, I don't want to work with Krieger. And then Saw's finally like, you know what? I will work with Krieger. And Luthen's like, you know what? I already ratted Krieger out. Krieger is going to go into this thing and he's going to get killed because if he doesn't, then the Empire will know that we're listening to them and then they'll chicken out of stuff. So I am sacrificing Krieger to the Empire to preserve our pieces on the chessboard and keep stuff close to the chest. I don't know who Krieger is.
Yeah, I looked
I don't
him up.
see him on the cast list.
I don't remember him at all.
And so here's the difference to me. That looks like one of the aliens that captured them in the spider web, like a little head.
Oh my God.
Like those guys were disgusting to look at.
So fucking gross.
Hated them. So in Game of Thrones, which I feel like we're comparing this to.
Yeah.
When there are consequences, we see the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
We see famously season 1, this guy messes up. Boromir messes up and they cut off his head. And we see that happen. We don't need to actually see it like graphically, but we see the consequences of that. We see his family squirm and deal with it. Then we see the direct ripple effects of that thing. I think having the biggest betrayal in this show be a Krieger that we don't have any interaction with at all is just a huge misunderstanding of what makes Game of Thrones style dramas and betrayal mean something.
Sure. Because
Luthen is, I guess, betraying and recruiting Saw with a whole conflict that we don't see. And you know what? That sounds pretty cool. They're talking about Krieger and Krieger getting betrayed and Krieger trying to work together. They don't show him recruiting Krieger. Like, that's the part of this that I would love to see, is like building the rebellion, seeing fellow rebels on the same team betray each other because they have to, because the big picture is more powerful than any individual. Like that, I can't believe we didn't see Krieger. I can't believe Krieger isn't in this. I can't believe we don't see Krieger betrayed. Can you imagine? Wow. Can you imagine the face on Krieger when he realizes he was set up and betrayed? And then we could see the pieces. In Game of Thrones, something happens, we see it, and then we see the people who benefited from it. The pieces slide into place, and the puzzle comes together. And this was a strategic move for some people, and maybe this gets Luthen and Saw on the same page. But then maybe the next decision takes them farther apart. And that's the drama and the intrigue of the Game of Thrones, right? Or that kind of style of drama. I think on the topic of Game of Thrones, while I'm still on this, unless you're puzzling at me.
The only thing I'm thinking of is you're right. You're fucking right. That's the biggest betrayal on the show. That's the most consequential betrayal on the show. I would say, prior to this, if you would ask me what the biggest betrayal on the show was, I would have said when Bix's husband or boyfriend rats out Cassian. But
you know what his name is?
What?
It's fucking Tim. I didn't realize that until I had no idea his name was Tim. And then he gets gunned down in the street. And I'm like, fuck yeah, that's what you get, Tim. And then and then Bix screams, Tim. And I was like, fuck, his name's Tim. We got the rat.
Dude.
The rat, the loser, the guy who sells it out, the guy who doesn't respect his girlfriend or whatever enough to listen to her. This guy is a fucking loser. Like, snitches get stitches. He had it coming. I don't think anyone shed a tear for Tim. And his name's Tim, and that hurts me a little bit, man.
Kevin caught a stray in Deadpool 2. I don't know if you remember in the opening scene, there's that part where Deadpool looks at a penis and goes, Scoutmaster Kevin? And I was like, yeah, that shouldn't hurt, but it does hurt.
It always hurts a little.
Tim's betrayal is the one that it's the most human. It's the most relatable. It's the one that we can see happening because, a scorned lover is so human. That's so normal in our day-to-day life.
Well, I don't give a shit about Tim.
Krieger would have been the more interesting thing to see. That would have been really cool.
And Tim isn't Cassian, halfway through the series.
Sure.
This is some rando we don't know and didn't like him the whole time because they've already introduced Binks and Cassian and I'm already shipping them immediately. I'm like, these two belong together. Tim is like a stopgap on this. Cassian's playing the waiting game, just waiting for Tim to do some shit like this, get himself killed. And, everyone cheered when he died. I'm sure everyone listening to this, regardless whether you loved or hated the show, we all are glad Tim is dead.
Every one of us.
And I think if that's the situation, I think if you want to do a real drama with tension, we should be conflicted about Tim dying. We should kind of like Tim and kind of hate Tim and feel a way about Tim as opposed to being like, well, this guy sucks. He's awful. And I think
Fair.
The other thing, I want to hear more. I want to hear more of your take on this. But on the Game of Thrones topic, I know when I'm watching Game of Thrones, when it was good, what everybody wants. I know what everyone is working towards. I know what people's like tangible goals are. In this, the goal is Empire bad. No likey Empire. Like that's the goal of everyone. And everyone's like, we're going to fight the way we can. And Mom's like, give me some money. And my 15-year-old daughter wants to marry a boy. And I don't know. It's
so much fun.
I don't know what people want. I don't even know what Stellan wants. I don't know what Luthen wants. I don't know. Like, they're not trying to accomplish a thing. They're not solving a heist. There isn't an item they want. There isn't a specific mission they want. It's just Empire bad. And that's not enough for me. I'm sorry. I need a thing.
Well, they need to overthrow a force that is so hilariously overpowered that it seems impossible. So, like, the prison's a great analogy.
We've already seen that happen in the other movies that we already have.
Not in Andor.
They've led into that.
But we know that it's going to build to that
already.
But how do they get the leverage in the first place?
Who gives a shit about Stone? What do you mean? It's Rogue One, Luke Skywalker shows up, they win. Like Stellan Skarsgård doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. It's cool to like add him as like details later, but I like Stellan Skarsgård. I think Luthen's awesome in this.
Yeah.
I don't think Luthen does anything to change the way I feel about Rogue One or the other movies. I don't know. It's just not working for me. You know,
I'm
not mad at it. I know people love this.
I do want to. I want to dive into this because we were talking about specific wants, and I would say that like a specific want that is very clear and a character that I really want to talk about in this is Dedra. Dedra is so incredibly interesting in the show to me. We know exactly what she wants. She wants to be the best Nazi, but they do such a good job with like kind of like hiding that hand and presenting you with so many experiences where she's like betrayed in very relatable ways at work and undercut by pretty relatable employees that you kind of start to see past the fact that this person is a horrible villain. Like she wants to be a really good employee at a company that is so unbelievably evil, but they're able to structure things so that the things that you're focused on, the magic trick is that you're focused on the immediacy of the very relatable setbacks that she faces to the point where you have to remind yourself, like, she sucks. She's complicit and the worst stuff possible. But like they managed to get to a point where when they get her into the torture scene with Bix, it feels in a way like a character that it's so strange to see a character that you have such a history with that you have previously rooted for in scenes, fucking torturing a character that you've rooted for in scenes. So like that's something where I don't even know that Game of Thrones effectively pulled off. No spoilers, they've kind of started doing a little more of this in the current season of House of the Dragons. But I don't know that they really ever effectively pulled off a point where you were truly rooting for someone at one point who was very clearly a villain. And so like it was just interesting to me that they were able to kind of bait the audience in that way and get you to be rooting for someone that is such a clear villain. And as a general Star Wars side note, it still weirds me out that so many people like dress up as stormtroopers and go to the Disney parks and buy the Empire hats. Cause it's like, this is not normal evil. They're like, I mean, they're a fascist regime. Like, why are we dressing up like that?
That is crazy. They're
space Nazis.
I mean, they're a symbol of evil. Yeah, they're space Nazis, and people think it's fun to be a space Nazi.
It's fucking weird.
But Star Wars, they're opening this show with like a montage of shiny helmets.
Yeah,
and that's what they're selling us on. They're not selling us on these are space. They want their cake and eat it too. I hate that. The opening credits to this, I've talked about it before in the pod. I hate it. It's a mix of characters and then just shiny helmets. Yeah, and that just kind of forces you to discount both, like the stormtrooper is simultaneously a joke and a bit and also a space Nazi. And that's a weird line to walk, maybe we don't need Andor because all of a sudden we're adding more loaded connotation to stormtrooper helmets that like kids are dressing up as. Yeah. Like we're turning them into worse creatures, like worse people through this experience, you know?
They went from being Dr. Octopus to like fucking Christoph Waltz and Inglourious Basterds.
We're making them worse, but I mean, okay, I get what you're saying about Dedra and Bix.
Mm-hmm.
When Dedra shows up to torture Bix, are you rooting for Dedra?
Like, no. At that point, no. But it's because,
No.
But we have related to her to a point that you don't often relate to villains.
I guess. We saw some background, you know? I don't know if I'm actively rooting for her. I think I'm kind of like, why am I watching this? And it's literally like she requests a file and the guy is like, no, I'm not going to give you this file. So she goes to their manager. It's like, so-and-so won't give me the file. And they have a meeting where they discuss who's going to get the file. Like, come on. Like, give me a fucking break.
It's a Star Wars show for adults, Tim.
Yeah, I didn't realize that's what people meant. I thought I was getting Deadpool. I didn't realize I was getting like to walk through a tax audit. Like, this is...
You can't pick and choose what makes something for adults, Tim. It's everything or it's nothing.
And then all of a sudden, Dedra, the woman who finally succeeded in getting the file, that I guess some part of me was like, way to go, Dedra, way to get that file. It goes to torture Bix, who's like the closest thing to a hero we have in this show. And it's like, oh God, how do I feel about File Girl torturing Wonder Woman, basically? It's like, no, it's just, I'm not conflicted about this at all. I don't
know. Shit. Well, Tim, I want to thank you for your respectful discourse today. I know that this could have gone a lot worse. And I want to truly thank you for pulling your punches today.
Thank you. I just want to be respectful to our fans and friends who have said this would be a good thing. I agree to disagree, you know, and I think it's fine. I get, you know, you make good points. I think maybe if you're looking for more background on Star Wars, you could enjoy this. If you're wondering how the paperwork is filed, if you're wondering about how the stormtroopers police different districts, if you're worried about gerrymandering in the Empire.
Real quick, did you learn more about Star Wars backstory from this or the 4-hour-long Star Wars hotel video?
Oh, I was going to bring up the hotel. Jesus Christ. Oh, man. I would watch that hotel video again before rewatching Andor. Like, my God, that was riveting.
I probably will rewatch it. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's fucking sick, dude. it's worth
awesome.
Every minute of that 4 hours.
Gosh, it looked better than the finale did.
Oh, Jesus. The finale was my biggest beef, but we'll get to that later.
Oh my gosh. Should we run it? Should we do more right now? Should we keep going?
You know what? We'll let the audience decide. If you want us to do more, let us know. Send us an email, nerdyfor30@gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Rest up, bud. I'm coming for you.
Stay nerdy, everybody.
Stay nerdy.
Bye.
Bye.